Now I'm going to systematically remove the gears and examine them. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the Kickstarter assembly, which is basically the Kickstarter shaft is going to come out, and that has on it, it has this gear here, which is in good shape. No broken teeth on that one. Got one little wear spot, actually not even, yeah, one little tiny damaged area there on that tooth. Yeah, not enough to warrant replacing though. And that other tooth looks good. The shaft looks pretty good. So then we've got on this, which is the output shaft. This is the shaft that actually goes all the way out the other side, and the sprocket actually attaches to the other side of it. The first gear we encounter is this one, but on top of this gear there is a spacer or a shim right here. So we remove the shim, and lo and behold, what do we got there? We got a tiny little pin. Uh-oh, got a tiny little pin showed up. Oh, that's not good. Alright, so we got this tiny little pin that fell out. A little dowel. I have to figure out where that goes. Alright, back to the gears. And take this gear off. This gear is badly damaged. Several teeth are missing or chewed in half. So this gear definitely is going to have to be replaced. The next gear that's going to come off as we move over to this shaft. And this is the shaft that actually has the dogs on it that move back and forth to activate the shifting action on, well, actually it looks like they both, one dog actually activates on this shaft and the other one on this shaft. Alright, so next gear is we move over to this shaft. We'll call this the intermediate shaft, and take off this first gear, which is the one that's the most destroyed. This just has entire teeth that are sheared off. Big time junk. Then we can move back over to the output shaft and remove the next gear, which is this gear here, which is in good shape. This has got a concave area on the back that faces these pins here on this gear right here. Okay, so convex side facing out towards me. Then let's see, what do we got next? That is going to be the one that is activated by the dog over here, and the dog's not going to come out unless we remove this pin, which I don't want to do just yet. So let's go back over to this intermediate shaft and see if this next gear comes off. It does not. Oh, well, no, it wants to come out with the whole thing. Okay, so at this point, what do I want to do now? Don't really want to do that either. Okay, so at this point, I think I want to remove this pin, or this shaft right here. When I remove this shaft, that's going to allow the dogs that activate the gears to be removed, I'm pretty sure. So I'll remove that shaft. Shaft looks good. Doesn't look bent. Now I should be able to swing this dog down and remove it. Okay, it's got a number on it, 5R34A. So that's the one that's closest to me. And that goes in this way. It's not cracked, doesn't look bent. and I reach down inside here. Now that actually, these forks right here actually go right in this area here where my finger is, right behind this gear. Now I'll be able to take the inner dog out. Again, I'm going to slide this out. Oh yeah, and this pin right here on this fork or dog or whatever you want to call it rides in this first groove. The next one, which has a number 5C40V on it, that actually doesn't want to come out right now because the crankshaft is kind of in the way. So I'll hold off on that. Should be able to go back to taking this gear off. What's holding that on? Well, let's start with this little collar right here. It's got splines that goes on this splined output shaft. Looks to me like, yeah, there's a hole in that shaft, and there's a hole on this sucker, and I'd be willing to bet you better make sure when you put this back together that you put it on just like this. Otherwise, if I put this on any other way, well, you know what, it's good to see. Well, no, see, I can put that on the wrong way. That would be wrong right there, because now that hole is blocked, so your oil's not going to be able to get through there. So make sure when you're putting this sucker back on, that hole lines up with that hole. All right, and then that allows me to remove this little washer, and that exposes this snap ring, which I gotta get my snap ring pliers to take that one off. So I gotta put the camera down. Okay, there's my snap ring. Remove my snap ring. Now this gear will come off. And there's no timing relationship between these two gears. That comes off. This gear, no damaged teeth. Looks good. All right. That now leads us back to this one, which that looks like that gear. This gear right here looks like it's part of this shaft. So that's not going to come out unless I pull the whole shaft. And this gear, it's held on by a snap ring, but it's also not going to clear, the teeth aren't going to clear this inner gear here. So come to an impasse. I've got to do something. So I'm going to pull this shaft, the intermediate shaft. Oop. Okay, so as soon as I pull that, my other fork or dog drops out. Now, the 5C40V faced out, and this pin engages this second groove on the drum, shifting drum. And now that third one also can drop out now. The third one engages the third groove, or the one furthest in. That's got a 5L48D stamped on it. So that one also looks good. Okay, so that now allows me to pull this shaft, okay, which when I pull this shaft, I'm just going to set that shaft aside as an assembly, all the way in inside the case. There's another gear here. That gear has these little blind holes, oval shaped holes that are going to face me when I put it in. That gear also in excellent condition. And then this small tiny drive gear all the way in. This is the last gear. Alright, no damage on that gear, excellent condition. And that gear doesn't appear to have anything on it that would indicate that it has to go in a certain way or the other. Well, there is actually a mark, paint mark right there on that. So I'll have to review my video because I didn't notice how it was, but I'll put that back in the way it was when I took it out. And of course, those are actually going to be, this gear and this gear are actually going to get slid back onto this assembly and then slid in to the case. And then I'm just going to look at these gears here, these shifting gears. No teeth broken on that one, no teeth broken on that one. This looks like it's in good shape, so we'll leave that alone. And that brings us to, we've got just this one assembly left, which I'd be willing to bet I can pull this shaft and the whole thing will come out together. There we get tired of being wrong. Alright, so what I'll do next is I'll take that snap ring off. Well, I decided to go back to work on this because I got some parts in, but unfortunately I forgot to order a new oil filter screen, and this one's got a hole poked through it, so I definitely want to replace that, especially since it's only about a $3 item online. And also what's fairly inexpensive to replace, and I'm gonna take the trouble of replacing now while I have this all apart, would be this oil seal here where the shift lever comes out, and this seal actually here around this sprocket output shaft, because they're, again, pretty cheap. So anyway, I want to completely disassemble this. So whoops, there's the shifting drum. That actually goes in, these three holes face out towards this side, and then on this side that looks like a little shim that locks into a hole right there. I'm going to just leave that together just like that. Anyways, I'm going to remove this shaft right here, which should just pull straight out. So I'm going to do that right now. The reason why I want to completely disassemble this is so I can give it a good cleaning, because right now there's actually teeth that broke off laying here. It just fell out with the oil, and other little pieces of metal from what's left of those gear teeth that came off, and that's all in here, and I don't want any of that to be inadvertently left inside, like this one right there. You can see it's stuck in there. That's a perfect example. It's down in this sledge. This sludge in the bottom here is keeping all of those little pieces of metal in there. I don't want those in there, because those can get into my new parts and really wreak havoc. Not to mention, I want to make sure that there's nothing inside these bearings. Okay, this is kind of a tight fit there where it has to come through the seal. It gets hung up on this part right here, so I had to give it a good pull, and when I did, it came out kind of fast and all the pieces went flying. So basically what you have is you have a gear here, and you have this gear, this shim. Not sure exactly what order those go in, but I'll be able to look at a parts breakdown online and figure that out when I'm reassembling it. And then there's this shim right here, just fell off from right there. So this shim, I know, with the blue color to it, I know that's going to be the one that's going to be right here on the outermost part of the shaft before it goes through that bearing. Alright, figuring out what order this all goes back together in ended up being pretty easy after all, because I knew that this shim, because it was stuck to the inside of the case, goes on this end first. But before that goes on, Got this gear here. This gear has to face with this concave area facing in, because if you put it on this way, then no matter how far over this gear right here is on the splines, it's these nubs still, these dogs still engage it. So it has to go on this way. And then this washer or this shim has to go between this gear and this gear, because it only fits down to this point right here. It can't go over these splines. And then this gear has to go on because the splined area, because it has the splines, and it has to go with the dogs facing this gear. Otherwise it won't work at all. So anyways, so this gear I'm not taking off. If you took that clip off, you could remove this gear, but I have no reason to remove that gear, so I'm going to leave that gear on there. So again, the way this goes on is with these dogs facing to the left, like so. Then this shim. Then this gear, the concave section right here facing down towards the dogs. And then this wide shim on the end. And that's how that assembly goes back in through this bearing and then that seal. Now, in order to remove the crankshaft assembly, I need to remove this flywheel. And as you may recall, I don't have a puller to pull this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off this nut, and I'm going to tap on this nut, which should push the crankshaft and bearing assembly on the backside that I can't see out of the case. And my hope is that if I can push it out far enough, this flywheel will bottom out and want to pop off this end of the crankshaft. Alright, that's not going to work because this is stuck on here pretty well, and I didn't tap it very hard because I was able to see that the bearing backed out a little bit, but then it stopped. So I could see that the proper way to do this is going to be to pull this off from this side. I'm going to have to figure out a way to pull this off, because if I just keep banging on this, I run the risk of doing some severe damage to the crankshaft or the case. So until I figure out how to pull this off, I guess we'll get a standstill again.